quietly working their way into Microsoft's corporate network. And not just Microsoft's, Epic Games, Valve, Zombie Studios. These are not state-sponsored operatives. Some of them are teenagers. One of them, a young man named Arman Sadri, taught himself C++ writing Call of Duty cheats and had actually worked at Microsoft briefly, debugging Xbox games. For 2 years, they live inside these networks. They copy credentials. They exfiltrate source code. They steal the technical specifications for the unreleased Durango console. At one point, they pull military Apache helicopter simulator software out of a Microsoft partner studio. The scale of the breach is staggering. But here is the part that sounds like fiction. When stealing the blueprints isn't enough, when even the source code can't help them crack the cryptography, they escalate. In September 2013, using stolen credentials, members of the group physically walk into a secure building on Microsoft's campus in Redmond, Washington, and walk out with prototype Xbox One development kits. Not a metaphor, a physical break-in at one of the most powerful corporations on Earth to steal a game's console. It didn't work, even though they had the source code. They had the internal documentation. They had the actual pre-release hardware sitting on their desks. And they still could not produce a working exploit for the retail console. The architecture held even against people holding its own blueprints. What they got instead was the FBI, wiretaps, raids, indictments, and prison sentences. The first great assault on Fortress Durango ended not with a crack, but with a federal case. And then came the long, humiliating silence.
The Best Buy 4th of July sale is happening now.
The year is 2014, then 2016, then 2018. Around the Xbox One, the rest of the industry is on fire. The Nintendo Switch falls to a boot ROM bug, so fundamental it can never be patched. The PlayStation 4 falls again and again. Browser exploits chained into kernel exploits. Even an attack delivered through the Ethernet port itself. Each new generation of hardware arrives, and within 2 or 3 years, the scene takes it apart. This is the natural order of things. It has been since the 1970s. The Xbox One absorbs everything. Researchers do find bugs, real ones, in the Edge browser, in system applications. On any other console, those bugs would be the beginning of the end. On the Xbox One, they are dead ends. An attacker compromises the browser and finds himself standing in a locked hotel room, staring at walls of encrypted memory, with no path to the manager, no path to the keys, no path anywhere. The hypervisor watches, shrugs, and terminates the partition. For nearly a decade, the most talented reverse engineers alive are reduced to sniffing encrypted traffic and getting nothing. In 2024, 11 years in, the scene finally lands what looks like a real blow. Researchers disclose a genuine kernel exploit in SystemOS, the staff wing of the hotel. It works on the Xbox One and even the newer series consoles. The community celebrates. Podcasts run episodes on how to prep your console for the incoming exploit. This is it. This is the breakthrough, or so they thought. But it isn't really. The exploit captures a room, not the castle. Researchers can poke at the dashboard, read some telemetry, manipulate the administrative partition, but the hypervisor boundary holds. The GameOS partition stays sealed, and the cryptographic keys remain locked in hardware behind bridges that burned 11 years ago. Microsoft patches it within months. The fortress, once again, stands. And in the aftermath, the entire research community arrives at the same cold conclusion. The software cannot be beaten. The partitions are too isolated. The math is too perfect. There is exactly one road left, and it is the road that killed the Xbox 360. Stop attacking the logic. Attack the electricity. The year is 2026. At a security conference called RE/Verse, a researcher named Marcus Gasadellin, known in the community as Doom, walks on stage to deliver a talk with a title of almost comical understatement, Hacking the Xbox One. Gaisdellen is not a hobbyist. He co-founded a vulnerability research firm. He has taught binary exploitation at the university level. He has spent years professionally evaluating silicon roots of trust. And, in a detail the forums have been chewing on ever since, he used to work at Microsoft. That part is public record. What he knew about the Durango boot ROM from his time inside, whether anything he saw there shaped the attack at all, that remains pure speculation, argued about endlessly in the scene, and confirmed by no one. What is not speculation is what he did next. His target was the bedrock itself, that 64 kilobyte boot ROM etched into the silicon in 2013, the first bridge, the root of all trust. Microsoft had armored it against exactly this kind of attack. Dual cryptographic signatures, error-corrected instruction fetches, debugged interfaces physically disabled, and randomized delays scattered through execution specifically to make glitch timing impossible to predict. Gaisdellen's answer was a homemade fault injection rig built around a Raspberry Pi Pico, the $4 chip, soldered directly onto the power rails of a launch model motherboard. The chip watches the console's clock cycles and power signals, waiting. And at one rigorously calibrated microsecond during boot, it starves the processor of voltage for less than a nanosecond. But here is what separates this attack. The exploit he named Bliss. From everything that came before, it is not one glitch. It is two. A double glitch landed in sequence, nanoseconds apart, each one defeating a separate hardware protection. The first voltage drop is timed to the exact instant the ARM security processor initializes its memory protection unit, the hardware that defines which code is allowed to touch which memory. Starved of power for that instant, the processor misfetches the instruction. It skips the security setup entirely, and, this is the crucial part, it doesn't know it skipped it. It carries on, fully confident, completely unguarded. Nanoseconds later, the second drop lands, timed to a memory copy operation during the cryptographic header read. This one corrupts the processor's pointer logic mid-instruction, bending the flow of execution away from the hard-coded boot sequence and into memory the attacker controls. And that's checkmate. Not a crack in the wall, the absence of the wall. The attacker is now running code at ring 0, beneath everything, before the first bridge is even crossed. He can patch every later boot stage directly in memory. He can dump the protected regions and walk out with the decryption keys that 12 years of exploits never touched. He can load Linux. The collapsing bridges never get to collapse. The paranoid hotel manager never gets hired. The entire fortress, every partition, every burnt fuse, every encrypted wall is built on top of a foundation that now belongs to someone else.
Hey, easy! What the hell are you doing?
Wait, it's not what it looks like. It's a job, not what you think.
Save it. Someone like you will do anything for money.
12 years of perfect math, defeated by 2 precisely timed flickers of electricity. Now, before anyone reading headlines panics or celebrates, here is what Bliss is not. It is not a piracy apocalypse. The attack requires lab-grade equipment, delicate microsoldering, and deep expertise. The timing window is so narrow that the success rate is roughly 1 in a million boots. You leave the console glitching itself for days in hope. Hold the voltage drop a moment too long, and you don't hack the motherboard, you kill it. Early reports suggest the attack may only work on the original 2013 launch boards, though that too is still speculation, not yet audited across every hardware revision, and the later consoles, the 1S, the 1X, the series machines, shipped with voltage glitch monitors baked into the silicon, watching their own power rails for exactly this kind of assault, ready to halt the system the instant the electricity misbehaves. But on those 2013 consoles, here is the detail that should make you sit up. Microsoft cannot fix this, ever. The vulnerability isn't in software. It's in the immutable boot ROM, the one piece of the console that was deliberately, proudly designed to never change. The feature that made the Fortress unbreakable for 12 years is the same feature that makes it unpatchable forever. The strongest stone in the wall, and the only one that can never be replaced. So, who actually wanted this? Not, for the most part, pirates. For researchers like GamingCommunity, the Xbox One was the ultimate cryptographic puzzle, and his talk was a warning shot for an entire industry. Fault injection is still real, and it works on zero-trust architectures designed by trillion-dollar companies. For the preservation community, this was a watershed. Digital storefronts close. Servers go dark. Disks rot. Without the keys locked inside that silicon, there is no way to archive these games, no way to build accurate emulators, no way to resurrect consoles bricked by expired certificates. For them, Bliss isn't a heist. It's an act of archaeology, recovering the keys to a library before the building burns down on schedule. And for the pirates, Microsoft saw them coming 12 years ago. Because here is the final, quiet genius of the whole design. Microsoft always assumed the hardware would eventually fall. So they moved the real perimeter, somewhere no soldering iron can reach, the cloud. Every time a console connects to Xbox Live, it must cryptographically prove its boot chain is intact, that its fuses match, that its memory is untampered. A glitched console can run anything it wants, alone, in the dark. The moment it touches the network, it is identified and permanently banned. You can beat the silicon with $4 of hardware and 1,000,000 tries. You cannot voltage glitch a data center in another state. And there's one more legacy hiding in plain sight. That paranoid hotel, the invisible manager, the encrypted rooms, the guests who never meet. Microsoft took that architecture and built Azure Confidential Computing on its foundations. The same design that kept a video game from reading your password in 2013 now isolates banks, hospitals, and governments, sharing servers in the cloud. The Xbox One wasn't just a console. It was the proving ground for how a trillion-dollar company learned to trust nothing. And its DNA is now load-bearing infrastructure for the modern internet. So, how do you score a 12-year siege? Consider what it took. The blueprints were stolen, and the fortress held. Prototype hardware was carried out of Redmond by hand, and the fortress held. 11 years of the best software exploitation on the planet, and the fortress held. In the end, beating it required abandoning software entirely, required a world-class researcher, a custom rig, an attack on the physical behavior of electrons, and a million attempts to land 2 nanosecond-long punches in perfect sequence. Microsoft set out to build a console that couldn't be hacked. What they actually built was a console that couldn't be hacked profitably. And in the economics of piracy, that is the same thing as winning. But the deeper lesson is the one GamingCommunity left hanging in the air at Re/Verse. And it's the same lesson the Xbox 360 taught in 2011, and the same one every locked device since has ignored at its peril. You can make the math perfect. You can burn your keys into silicon and blow your bridges behind you, and encrypt every wall of every room. But all of it. Every signature, every fuse, every invisible manager, ultimately runs on a thin, fragile river of electricity. And anyone patient enough, with physical access and a $4 chip, can reach into that river and make the machine doubt its own mind for a single nanosecond. 12 years, 1 nanosecond. That's the whole story. Because given enough time, given physical access, given sufficient motivation, nothing is unhackable. Some things just take a siege.
That's it? Wow. I mean, you gotta admit, that's kind of impressive, guys. Wow.
So today we're going to take a look at what in the tomfoolery happened here, because it's safe to say we have quite the insane story to talk about today. And before we dive into what's wrong, it's worth understanding why people took this project seriously in the first place. You see, Akon isn't just some random celebrity making wild.
And under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't happen. But we understand we're on the bigger and better thing.
Shedeur Sanders entered the 2025 NFL Draft as a projected top 5 quarterback. He came out as pick 144 after 3 days of waiting. A prank call, interview rooms that went wrong, and questions about a father whose shadow the NFL could not ignore. Here's what happened. The setup.
That's why I know I'm the best quarterback out there, because I've done it and I proved it.
He said that at the NFL Combine in February 2025. At that point, no significant analytical voice in professional football had a strong argument against him. Shedeur Dewan Sanders was born on February 2002 in Tyler, Texas. His father was Deion Sanders, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 8-time Pro Bowler, Pro Football Hall of Famer. Football was not a hobby Shedeur developed. It was the structure of the home he grew up in, shaped early and shaped with intention. He played his first 2 college seasons at Jackson State University in Mississippi, following his father there in 2021, when Deion accepted the head coaching job with no prior college coaching experience on his resume. Shedeur had scholarship offers from other programs. He chose his father. At Jackson State, he won the Jerry Rice Award as the top FCS freshman in the country, led the Tigers to back-to-back SWAC championships and the program's first ever back-to-back Celebration Bowl appearances, and threw for over 3,000 yards with 30 or more touchdowns in each of his 2 seasons there. In 2023, Deion accepted the head coaching job at the University of Colorado. Shedeur transferred with him. The move to Colorado changed the scale of the conversation around him almost overnight. The Buffaloes had historically been one of the quieter programs in the Power 5, a program that had not generated sustained national interest in years and had not had a significant bowl run in over a decade. Deion's arrival pulled the media curtain back in a way that programs with multiple national championships rarely attract. Documentary coverage, transfer portal movement, NIL activity, reality television-style media attention. The entire infrastructure of the Coach Prime brand arrived in Boulder, Colorado, along with a quarterback who was now operating at its center. And Shedeur performed inside that spotlight with the kind of numbers that make it very difficult to argue the moment was too big for him. Across 2 seasons at Colorado, he threw for over 7,300 yards and 64 touchdowns, completing passes at a rate that placed him among the most accurate quarterbacks in college football history over that span. His 4-year career totals stood at 14,353 yards, 134 touchdowns, and just 27 interceptions on a 70.1% completion rate across 50 games. He earned the Johnny Unitas Gold.
That's the sound of an American oil company hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, and I'm the CEO of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next webinar where you can drill deeper into our bond offering. We currently offer 2 investment opportunities: a private placement bond offering for accredited investors with target annual interest rates between 9 and 13%. Also, we offer a registered bond offering open to both accredited and non-accredited investors with rates ranging from 9 to 12%. Our daily production rates have risen as high as 39,000 barrels of oil per day. We've sold more than 10 million barrels, and we're just getting started. Sign up for the webinar and start your journey with Phoenix Energy today.
If you got hit, even if you were not driving, you need to try this.
Because if you were in a car accident in the last year, you could be owed a large cash payment and not even know it. Even if you weren't driving, all you have to do is click the link in this video, answer 5 simple questions about your accident, and see if you have a case that could be worth money, like this, or even like this. If the accident wasn't your fault and it happened in the last 12 months, you could be owed a lot more than you think. And this doesn't just apply to drivers. If you were a passenger in an Uber, walking, riding a bike, or on a motorcycle, you may still qualify. Most people never check, and insurance companies are hoping you don't. So don't skip this. Click the link and see what your case could be worth. People all over the country have already received checks for tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they did it without going to court. That's because there's money already set aside for accidents like these. For example, Stacy didn't think her accident was a big deal, but After checking, she ended up receiving $90,000.
Oh my God!
And if your accident wasn't your fault, you may be able to get money for time you missed at work, medical bills, pain and suffering, damage to your car, and you don't have to pay anything up front. You don't have to fight insurance companies, and you don't have to deal with lawyers trying to take advantage of you. Checking is easy. Just click the link and answer 5 quick questions. It takes about 30 seconds.
Golden Arm Award, the Deacon Jones Trophy, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, Second Team All-American. The hardware confirmed what the raw numbers were already saying. He named Tom Brady as the quarterback his game was built around. Not for athleticism, not for arm strength, but for the cerebral dimension of the position, for the ability to break defenses with preparation rather than with physicality.
Tom Brady? Yeah. I'm able to see what he has done and mentally how he was able to beat people with the mind.
Tom Brady went to the New England Patriots with the 199th pick of the 2000 NFL Draft, 6th round. One of the last players selected, the comparison was not lost on anyone paying attention to the trajectory being constructed around Shedeur, because Shedeur was pointed in the exact opposite direction. The 2025 quarterback class was considered thin relative to the cycles that had preceded it. Cam Ward from Miami was the consensus #1 quarterback prospect. Shedeur was the clear and agreed upon #2. The Cleveland Browns held the 2nd overall pick. The New York Giants held the 3rd. Both franchises were publicly and repeatedly documented as actively searching for franchise quarterbacks. Mock drafts across ESPN, NFL Network, and every major sports outlet placed Shedeur as high as 2nd overall and rarely outside the first 10 picks. The range was the upper tier of a draft, not the middle. The brand that surrounded those numbers was its own entity by this point. NIL deals had positioned him among the highest value college athletes in the country. Partnerships built on the crossover between his football profile, his father's celebrity, and the kind of organic digital following that most professional athletes spend entire careers trying to cultivate. And in the weeks before the draft, quietly, the signals from inside the league started to run in a different direction than the public projections. Teams that had conducted pre-draft visits and formal meetings with Shedeur were not coming out of those sessions with the kind of resounding enthusiasm that a projected top 5 quarterback pick typically generates. The temperature in front offices, relayed to the few journalists plugged in enough to hear it, was described as hedged, cooler than expected. Not catastrophic, not the language of a complete bust, but noticeably inconsistent with the confidence of the public rankings. The volume of the Sanders story had been absorbing those signals for months, but they were there, running underneath the noise, and they were accumulating.
Well, it's the facts that you need also. So it's not about confidence. You confidence, but you know when it's facts behind it.
He built a custom draft room at home. His father was there, his brothers Dion Jr. and Shiloh, his closest circle. The setup was built for celebration, the architecture of a room that has already absorbed the outcome and is waiting for confirmation. The posture in that room going into draft night was not manufactured. It was the product of a career that had, by every publicly available measure, earned exactly that kind of confidence. What arrived was not the call they were expecting, and the story of why that call never came the way it was supposed to is more than one story.
Excuse me.
Someone's popular. I've been selling stuff on eBay.
Valve's Steam Machine reservation queue is launching today for $1,050 for a 512 gigabyte model and $1,350 for a 2 terabyte model. They also have controller bundles. We'll put the conclusion up front, no bullshit. In GPU-bound gaming performance tests and with SteamOS for the machine versus our standard Windows bench, we found the Steam Machine performed closest to the RX 6600, Intel B570, and RTX 3060, with one instance of an RX 7600 match. The most immediate cards ahead of the Steam Machine and from modern generations were the RX 7600 and RTX 5050. It's not particularly powerful, mostly because it literally isn't powerful. Valve is limiting the TDP pretty hard on these parts due to the PSU capacity and for thermal reasons. Power consumption has it in the range of 170 to 180 watts gaming and in the low 200s for full torch or load, but that drops within minutes of starting. Thermally, the Steam Machine did better than you might expect with its closed-off front plate, but we were able to improve CPU clock boosting by dropping temperatures several degrees with a mod that we 3D printed. CPU performance and Stellaris simulation time benchmarking had the Steam Machine at around the level of the R7 3700X or R5 3600. Decompression testing had it at the R5 2600s level, with Blender putting it near the 5600X. Those are the key details up front. We have a lot of commentary on SteamOS as well, but we also have a lot of testing to do today to prove our work, including the fan tester to test the built-in custom fan that Valve's made for the Steam Machine. So we're using this to evaluate the pressure and the flow of the Steam Machine. Part of the testing includes mounting the back of this to the front of the fan tester bypassing the steam machine, plugging the fan into this that we've wired up with an adapter cable going to the steam machine fan, and then using all of that to measure how the built-in valve fan performs against the actual heatsink. This also includes testing for pressure and flow against the different faceplates, so the default one, which is just a solid wall, the valve includes, and the GN downpour steam vents that we made, and actually we are launching these on the store today. We printed over 100 samples of the different front panels and fan mods, and then I tested some of them for thermal performance. So for that, in addition to just doing all the steam machines, GPU, CPU, SSD, Wi-Fi, all of the thermal numbers for the box as shipped, we ended up wiring up a bunch of thermocouples too. So we have some of these that are going to the internal chamber underneath, because this is a dual chamber box basically. And then we're also collecting ambient actively, and we collect the exhaust temperature as well through a thermocouple logger. We synchronize that data with the internal sensors of the CPU and the GPU, and that allows us to look at if Valve is achieving okay thermals considering the size of the box. But really the way that they're getting the thermals they are, which are pretty good overall even with the solid plate, is by driving down the power consumption of the whole device to be low TDP, which reduces the performance but does improve the thermals. Since it's a small, potentially living room PC, basically like a console type of situation, we also want to measure the power consumption. So we did a bunch of power testing on it for gaming and for full torture workloads. We also did Schlieren imaging on it using the mirror back here, which we'll come back to that in a minute. And then the rest of the testing involved our hemianechoic chamber, where basically we set the mic up to a 1 meter distance away from the steam machine and measure it with the different plate options. But more importantly than our own is just testing Valve's, because Valve made a lot of claims about the acoustic performance of its steam machine back when we visited them in November of last year. And that's gonna be important, because if this is going in a living room or a bedroom setup where the tolerance for noise is lower, it needs to be quiet. And they're running off of one large 120 millimeter fan that is custom molded into a relatively wide fin spacing fin stack, which allows it to deal with the resistance to flow better, because since the fins are wider apart and because the fan is tuned to basically be a higher pressure fan rather than flow focused. Schlieren imaging allows us to see the behavior of the air around the steam machine. So for example, we can see the air density gradient on our other camera there by using this parabolic mirror matched with the source of light. So the setup is camera to capture, pin source of light through an aluminum foil with a hole punched in it, razor blade to help cut the light in half, not because it's sharp, attached to a tripod. And then on the other side, we have this parabolic mirror, which produces the magic that is Schlieren imaging, and it's gonna allow us to see how the air changes around the steam machine, specifically because it's actually pulling a lot of the air through the bottom. We brought you this video with our steam vent plates that we just launched on store.gamersnexus.net. These improve CPU and GPU thermals of the steam machine and add a dust filter while supporting our in-depth testing and our local team of 9 directly. We fully modeled the steam vents in-house, including months of R&D on design, structural rigidity, and slicer settings, because we're 3D printing these ourselves. Our team here hand installs the 4 magnets with 3M VHB backing in each plate we print and preps the dust filters that we custom designed, because Valve doesn't include a dust filter for the machine and it has gaping holes in the front. The steam vents come in a variety of colors, including blackout, a purple-blue color shift, orange box-esque color shift, an obnoxiously vibrant tricolor, stone-colored grille, silver blades, and a few blues. Our design is directly inspired by the Fractal Torrent, the best-performing ATX case we ever tested, and our homage is named Downpour. 3D printing is what allows us to move fast and make so many color combinations, because we don't have to hit high minimum order quantities. It also eliminates wasteful freight hops and price hikes, tariffs, and bullshit, because we just print it in the office and have our existing team oversee production. Then we bring it to the local warehouse team for assembly. It's also easier for me to sign these since we make them here. So I'm going to be signing the first 500 that we print, and then we'll distribute them randomly across orders over the next few weeks. We're also including a 7-year warranty, so if you have any problems with the plastics or dust filter at all over time, just email us and we'll swap it for you. The warranty even covers accidental damage, so if you drop it into a vat of acid, send us a photo of the charred remains and we'll send you a new downpour steam vent under warranty, as long as it was by accident. If you're wondering if our product is necessary, the answer is no. It's completely unnecessary, because Valve did a pretty fucking good job on the thermals and you don't need to buy ours. But we did an even better fucking job, and we have a ton of data to prove it. The end result is more color options, better quality control, and more of the money goes directly to my team locally to keep making videos. Grab one on store.gamersnexus.net. Back to it. Valve shared an early draft of today's blog post with the press, detailing the queuing system for purchasing and the pricing. It included lines like, quote, "The price at which we sell our hardware is a direct result of the cost of these components. We found we couldn't source some of our components at all at any price," end quote. That's not a surprise, but it sets the mood. We have a 3.5-hour long documentary covering the collapse of personal computing and the pricing, and that pricing is affecting Valve here as well. We'll link it below. Valve put some spin on its explanation of why it wouldn't subsidize the machine as well, saying, quote, "When companies sell their hardware under cost for competitive advantage or buy exclusive content for it, they're doing that to build a more closed system, one where you don't get to choose what software you want to use. We don't want that for PC hardware, and we don't think you should want it either. You shouldn't feel like you have to buy Valve hardware. You should be able to view it as just one option alongside all the devices for playing games," end quote. This is making the best of a bad situation, but we could also imagine Valve getting criticized for undercutting smaller manufacturers at $600 at a time when it's in a lawsuit over alleged monopolization would harm the credibility of its defense. So their choice of publishing it this way makes sense from a legal standpoint as well. With the actual prices of the Steam Machine, we definitely don't think they're in any danger of looking like they're unfairly undercutting people. Most of the rest of the post explains the complicated queue system Valve set up to combat scalping. If you sign up before June 25th, you get a random chance to be put in a randomized reservation queue, not chronological, and the overflow gets put in the queue to get into the queue. The randomization is a good thing, as it means you don't need to be at your computer at minute 0 or minute -1 for the controller, as there's no advantage to pre-ordering at the first minute versus pre-ordering 8 hours or a day later. The bottom line is that you don't need to rush too much if you want this, and scalping will be harder than usual. If you care about the finer details, they're in Valve's blog post. Valve finishes by answering the question, if I don't get a Steam Machine right away, is there anything else I can do? By basically saying, yeah, use your own computer. The new SteamOS 3.8 release is compatible with some non-Valve hardware as long as it's not NVIDIA. That's mostly because NVIDIA drivers on Linux are a nightmare, not because of Valve's own choices. The Steam Machine uses a 6-core 12-thread Zen 4 CPU with a max advertised boost clock of 4.8 GHz with a 30-watt TDP, which will be its largest limiter. The GPU uses RDNA 3 with 28 compute units, a 2.45 GHz max advertised sustained clock, a limited 110-watt TDP, and 8 GB of GDDR6 VRAM. I/O includes ports for 4 USB Type-A, 1 USB-C, a micro SD card slot, 1 HDMI and 1 DisplayPort, and a 1 gigabit Ethernet port. We were surprised and a little annoyed that Valve opted for a 1 gigabit port for Ethernet when 2.5 gigabit Ethernet is increasingly common, even on low-end motherboards now. And although most people aren't on an internet connection this fast, including us, Steam supports transferring games intra-network without a re-download to the outside web, and LAN speeds greater than 1 gigabit per second are becoming increasingly common. So it seems like a cost down to us. Valve ships with 16 gigabytes of DDR5 5600 RAM, a 300-watt power supply, and its 2 SKUs have either a 512 gigabyte or 2 terabyte NVMe SSD. RAM is the biggest problem. Not only is it limited to 16 gigabytes of DDR5 5600, but Valve broke news to us that it would be shipping Steam machines with either a single 16 gigabyte stick or 2 8 gigabyte sticks. The obvious problem with this is channeling. Memory in dual channel will objectively perform better than single channel, although Valve claims that gaming benchmarks didn't reflect much change.
The memory that's populated in the slots, like, you know, at some point you might have 2 DIMMs, at some point you might have 1. It just changes based on the supply that we can secure. But at the end of the day, it should be comparable speeds and all that.
Okay, yeah, just to be clear, basically, that system memory is 16 gigabytes. But again, to be able to build as many as we can, we have to essentially have some with 1 stick, 16, some with 2 sticks of 8. I mean, we validated the performance delta, and we don't really think it makes a big difference. or if any measurable difference at all. I mean,
for game workload.
For games work.
If you're doing workstation stuff, the memory stuff, we understand that dual channel has a difference there, but the wall clock time difference for real games is not. At least we thought it was worth it. It's either that or all the machines that have one slots, we couldn't have shipped them. But, so I think it's worth the trade-off. But that's definitely that's impacting it for sure.
Yeah. But obviously the 2 slots are there if anybody wants to use them or whatever.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird trade-off because it's like having one stick is actually better for some cases because some people might want to upgrade to 32 and now they can just plop down another module. Right? So it's a little bit of a trade-off either way. But right now, because we can't really decide on just one, and we have to just take the supply that comes in.
We'll do some additional testing with single-stick options, hopefully this week, and publish that in a follow-up. Market conditions are bad, though, and Valve is a nobody in the world of system memory purchasing. In fact, memory module maker G.Skill, whom we interviewed for our Collapse documentary, is also a nobody, and their entire business is literally purchasing memory. The companies getting priority are NVIDIA, OpenAI, and other hyperscalers and data center-type companies. Valve does not get contracts with Samsung, SK Hynix, or Micron, who collectively control almost the entire DRAM market. We actually have a documentary about the DRAM cartel. We spoke with Valve about that for a separate video coming up, but here's the important part. Were you able to lock in kind of contracts for memory with the suppliers directly, or did you have to jump through a bunch of hoops? Or
look, there's no contracts. There's nothing. Yeah. Like those guys, they are. They give us a price every month or something, and they say, you can buy that many, and it's yes or no. And if we say no, then they never talk to us again, right?
So the RAM situation is out of Valve's control, or anyone's control, other than like 5 companies, basically. Here's a pricing breakdown of the Steam machine as compared to the DIY price of a similar system by paper spec, which is different from a system by performance spec. On paper, the Steam Machine's semi-custom CPU and GPU are most comparable to AMD's R5 7540U and RX 7600M. These are laptop parts, so that's no good for DIY pricing. The most comparable new desktop hardware, other than OEM parts, so we're talking things you can actually buy retail, would be AMD's R5 7400F and RX 7600. The 7400F matches the Steam Machine CPU architecture and core count and has a similar max boost clock, but it has a noticeably higher 65-watt TDP. The machine is heavily power limited. The RX 7600 matches the Steam Machine's GPU architecture, VRAM, and clocks, but it has 32 compute units instead of 28 and a higher 165-watt TDP instead of 110 watts. We had to get creative with suitable replacements for Valve's proprietary CPU cooler, motherboard, and case. This isn't a spec we necessarily recommend, the one we chose, just close in parts. Compared to our DIY equivalent systems, the 512GB Steam Machine's premium over DIY is $71, or roughly 7.3%. It's $211, or 18.5%, over DIY for the 2TB configuration, which also includes the 2 extra plates. In reality, though, Valve doesn't perform anything like this system. The Steam Machine is far lower in performance than this equivalent build by paper spec. Valve's premium over DIY for a new build doesn't look like much, but the comparison's also not simple, since the parts are all semi-custom and power limited. For additional reference, HP sells its Omen 16L with an R5 8400F, RX 7600, 16GB of DDR5, and 512GB NVMe SSD for $1,350 at the time of writing, which makes Valve's 512GB Steam Machine $300 cheaper than HP's comparable but power unbound offering. Here's a look at steady-state GPU thermals using delta T over ambient values for A/B comparisons. Out-of-the-box test with a solid panel, feet installed, and the auto RPM, which resulted in 1252, put the Steam Machine at 23.5 dBA at 1 meter. GPU edge temperature held 42 degrees Celsius over ambient, junction was 57, and VRAM was 46. With ambient, those are about 62, 77, and 66 degrees. The GPU and memory are both within spec. Running auto RPM, but without a front panel, put the machine at 37 and 51, so a 5 to 6 degree improvement, while also reducing the fan by almost 100 RPM, which told us that there was room to improve on Valve's design. Normalizing RPM to 1252, our downpour mod improves thermals by 6 to 7 degrees, at 36 degrees edge, 50 junction, and 40 VRAM. Our noise level's higher at the same RPM at 27 dBA versus 23.5 dBA, so Valve prioritized noise. Most people are able to perceive noise changes at 3 dBA increments, so the downpour is louder but much cooler. We achieved slightly better thermals and better dBA SPL noise against the stock plate by setting the fan curve to max out at 1050 RPM instead. Noise reduced to 23 dBA and temperature reduced about 1 degree on the GPU. Running auto with downpour into filter, we improved by about 1 degree on the stock panel while now filtering dust. This is with a 0.5mm hole spacing on the filter, but our finals will be somewhere between 0.8 and 2.0. We're not sure yet, but that'll improve the thermals. Max fan RPM at 2000 pushes the solid plate machine to 35.4 dBA, a whooshing noise, and a 42-degree junction temperature. Downpour hit 38 degrees, 38.7 dBA, but without the wind whooshing noise. We wouldn't recommend, though, 2000 RPM regardless. Removing the feet only had a 1 degree impact to GPU thermals. This will be pretty interesting later. And as much as we'd like to sell our own improvements that we've made, we really have to give credit to Valve for doing far better than we expected with the solid front panel. You don't need our plate because this isn't thermal throttling stock. We'd love to sell it to you, but you can definitely just use the Steam Machine out of the box without thermal issues, as long as it isn't on carpet. That's really key here. If you jam the bottom, you're gonna have a bad time. CPU is up next. The fully default Steam Machine ran the CPU at 50 degrees over ambient for TCTL, or about 70 degrees with ambient, which is fine. Running our front panel RPM normalized puts it at 43, 43, and 49, a significant CPU temperature improvement at the cost of more noise. 1050 RPM drops noise levels below Valve stock and improves thermals about 1 to 2 degrees using downpour. Adding the high-density 0.5mm filter put it back at parity with Valve's default plate, except now the Steam Machine is filtered for dust. There's headroom for Valve to have boosted the power budget more for performance here as well, but it's likely targeting the worst-case scenario and the power limit of the power supply. But again, we'd still like OC options. What's not shown in the previous charts is the clock speeds, which are impacted by temperature. This chart shows the average CPU clocks across the highest cores and all cores. Our downpour panel at 1252 RPM improved clocks to 4047 MHz high and 3505 MHz all average, with the like-for-like comparison to the stock panel at 1252 RPM at 4001 MHz for high and 3467 MHz for all. At 1050 RPM, we're at roughly noise parity with similar thermals. The downpour panel improved to 4012 MHz, not much, not really noticeable, technically present. Panel is better for the device overall when given the trade-off option. Going to our plate at 1252 RPM, we saw an increase in SSD thermals of about 3 degrees Celsius to 12.9 from 9.9 stock. 12.9 degrees would be about 31 degrees or so with the ambient included, so way below operating spec characteristics above 1800 Hz. Our plate has its peak shifted left towards 117 Hz instead of 140 Hz for the direct comparison. We also see a lower noise level in the range of 200 Hz to 400 Hz, which is the low whooshing sound that we described earlier as generated by the stock. 176 watts is definitely well within its capacity. Also, the 13 watt idle here is at desktop for, well, gaming mode for SteamOS. If you have it off but in standby, we measured that at less than 1 watt. The full torture test utilizing Blender as a CPU load and firm arc for the GPU ended up with a different result here. Full system power draw once the load was fully launched shot as high as 209 watts, then dropped sharply down to 192 watts after a couple minutes. This seems to mostly be due to CPU limits as we logged CPU clocks and temperatures dropping at the same time, while GPU values remained relatively constant. We weren't thermal throttling, but 209 watts, despite being still well within the capacity of the power supply, is a good reminder as to why Valve maybe hasn't unlocked the power target controls with the PSU choice it made, because at most you might get an extra 40 to 50 watts before Valve would start feeling uncomfortable probably pushing you too close to the tactical capacity limits of the power supply. We get back 12 CPU megahertz values from proc CPU info, meaning the numbers correspond to logical processors rather than physical cores on the machine's 6-core 12-thread CPU, but we can still use them to illustrate a point. 4 of the clock speeds boosted high and then dropped in sync with power. The other 8 remained basically flat across the whole test. We've picked one of each plotted here. It took almost exactly 4 minutes for the initial throttling, followed by a roughly 30-second period of decreasing clocks until abruptly dropping down to a steady state. We don't think this is a big problem since games don't typically keep the CPU fully loaded for minutes at a time, but it is interesting to see the kind of limited boosting behavior and mixed clock speeds that we associated with Intel processors of the past. This is a clear throttle, likely intended to prevent thermal issues. Really, the biggest downside would be if you were doing especially things that aren't gaming, like, say, rendering with Blender, as we showed earlier, because in those types of workloads, you will load the CPU sustained for long periods of time, whereas with gaming, typically the CPU fluctuates up and down. Game benchmarking is next. We usually benchmark games and Windows using PresentMon via command line, a well-established open source tool. We've had great conversations with Intel's Tom Peterson about how PresentMon and the graphics pipeline work, but a lot of that is specific to Windows, including the PresentMon software. On Linux, including Bazite and SteamOS, we use Mango HUD for login, another third-party open source tool that Valve uses for its own SteamOS performance overlay. The frame time numbers we get from Mango HUD work for a general comparison to the PresentMon numbers in Windows, but the caveat is that they are different tools, monitoring different graphics pipelines on fundamentally different operating systems. It's not perfect, and these are not a strict A/B comparison, but it's what we have to work with. We're still learning about Wayland and the way things like screen tearing are handled on Linux, so stay tuned for that in future videos.
I see these ads all the time. They're fake. I download them and they play nothing like the ads.
That's because you downloaded the wrong one. The real one is called Top War. They made a game just like those fake ads.
I don't believe you. Let me try.
Resident Evil 4 is up now. This is another game where we have a massive amount of data due to its 3 years on the test bench. The Steam machine ran at 94 FPS average, putting it right around the same level as the 5700 Evoke from 2019. Lows are also functionally identical between them. The 2070 Super leads the Steam machine by a few FPS, with the 2070 Non-Super below it, and at 88 FPS average, around the same level as the 92 FPS from the 6600. The Steam machine ends up leading the 2070 and 3060 by about 6%, and the 2060 by 33%. As for what's ahead of it, the more modern RX 7600 ran at 112 FPS average for a lead of 20% over the machine. The A750 and RTX 5050 are also in this range. The Steam machine's performance in an absolute sense is overall okay in that it's playable, however it's weakly positioned in a relative sense. In Black Myth Wukong, we measured the Steam machine's holistic performance with SteamOS and the reporting differences at 43.9 FPS average, roughly tying the B580 and just ahead of the B570 from Intel. The RX 7600 ran at 47 FPS average, so technically an advantage, but they're comparable enough. The 5050 widens that gap despite being an awful video card, and the 6600 shows at least that the Steam machine is outperforming the ancient GPU with modern CPU combination. Comparing against older hardware, the RTX 3060 12GB is almost perfectly matched to the Steam machine, keeping in mind the CPU mismatch, but we're GPU bound here. Lows are also about the same. The RTX 2070 is nearly within error and variance. The Steam machine ends up being a blend of the RX 7600, RTX 3060, RTX 2070, and B580 in this chart. It meaningfully outperforms the 6600 and the 5700. In Starfield at 1080p Ultra, which is directly comparable to our GPU suite, the Steam machine ran at 41 FPS average and sat between the Intel A770 43 FPS average result and the A750 38.5 FPS average, also leading the 38 FPS average of the 6600 by 8%. The RTX 5050 without a CPU limit improves upon the Steam machine's performance by 19.8% for average frame rate, with the 5050 also improving upon the lows, which it has at 41 and 34 to the machine's 25 and 18, predictably. By scaling, it's also better. The Steam machine has disproportionately poor 1% and 0.1% lows in this test as compared to the average when scaled against other devices. This is atypical of games running on Proton, where we typically see disproportionate advantages against Windows. This happens sometimes, it just depends on the game. The RX 7600 remains our anchor point and leads it with a 49.8 FPS average or 20%. In Oblivion Remastered at 1080p Ultra, the Steam machine ran at 27 FPS average without any form of upscaling. Since we mostly care about the relative scaling and not absolute frame rate, that puts it as comparable to the 7600 and its 26.5 FPS average result. The Steam machine ended up with a technical improvement of 1.9% over the 7600. The frame time pacing is about the same between them, and the Steam machine leads the 2021 RX 6600 and its 19 FPS average by about 40%. In Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, the Steam machine ran at 50 FPS average, not bad in an absolute sense, and approached the B570 in average performance while running the same lows. That's a good thing for low pacing. The machine is still beaten by the CPU unbound RX 7600 at 59 FPS average, or a 19% advantage. In Dragon's Dogma 2, the Steam machine held a 52 FPS average with our 1080p max settings. Again, that's not bad in the absolute sense that you can play this game on the machine with these settings, especially if tuning the settings or using upscaling. In the relative sense, which is what we care about here, that makes it basically a B580 or A770 for performance, both of which struggled with this game. The RX 7600 leads the Steam machine with a 60 FPS average, or by 15%. 10%. The RTX 5050 is in the same spot. The Steam Machine outperforms the older RX 6600 by a few FPS average, although more notably with the lows. Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail's benchmark positions the Steam Machine lower than we typically expect, but it was reproducible. The Steam Machine ran at 86 FPS average with okay lows, but worse relative lows than devices like the RX 6600, which has the same average FPS. The machine ends up behind the 2070 and 5050, and far behind the 107 FPS average result of the RX 7600. We test the Outer Worlds 2 at 1080p very high, so this should be tuned down for real Steam Machine use cases, but this is what we have months of data on, and so it makes sense for the best relative comparison. The Steam Machine ran at 26 FPS average. More importantly, that has it tied with the RTX 5050 and Intel B570 ARC GPUs. The RX 7600 leads the Steam Machine by about 15% here, with the machine leading cards like the RTX 3060 and RX 5700 from an era past. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty at 1080p Ultra is next. The Steam Machine ran at 59 FPS average, about tied with the Intel Arc A750 and RTX 2070. The 3060 is just behind the Steam Machine, and the RX 7600 ran at 68 FPS average, an uplift of 16.6%. We also tried running the F1 series of games, including F124, but were unable to get it to run due to the anti-cheat software being incompatible with SteamOS. And we also ran Total War Warhammer 3, but it had issues with the in-game frame rate report mismatching Mango HUD, resulting in unreliable data. Ray tracing benchmarks are up now. We only have a couple. You'd really need upscaling for this to be workable, but everything scales relative to each other, so we'll stick to our approach for A/B comparisons. The Steam Machine ran at 21 FPS average in Cyberpunk with RT medium settings. Again, that improved with upscaling and settings tuning, but the relative rank would not meaningfully change and may even get worse versus other devices. The RX 7600 ran 8% ahead of the Steam Machine, but with worse 0.1% lows. The 6600 is just behind the machine in average, but also worse for lows. The RTX 3050, 3060, and 2070 all outperform the Steam Machine meaningfully. Valve posted a last-minute ray tracing performance patch that we also tested. The Steam Machine patch pushed it to 22.8 FPS average from 20.7, an improvement of 10%. It's a lot for a software update. We also ran ray tracing with Black Myth Wukong at 1080p high and using quality FSR settings. The end result was 14 FPS, so it's just not playable. Maybe on low settings and performance FSR, but RT in this game is really heavy, period, but especially for the Steam Machine. Valve's last-minute patch boosted it to 16.7 FPS from 13.8. Although the absolute value is obviously low, this is a huge percentage increase of 21%. That matches Valve's expectations. SteamOS has historically improved upon frame-to-frame interval over Windows for handhelds, so we'll look at frame times individually as well. We'll start with one of the best performers, which is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at 1080p Ultra. 20 milliseconds per frame translates to a sub-60 but playable frame rate, and the 1% and 0.1% lows stuck close to the average as well, indicating few spikes. In contrast, this Starfield pass at 1080p Ultra wasn't much worse on most frames, but had some huge spikes, up to 40 milliseconds or more. The biggest spike logged in this run was just above 60 milliseconds. These are noticeable against the 22 to 25 millisecond standard. It's unfortunate that we can't yet log frame data with the same detail as we would on Windows, since this would be the perfect opportunity to check the animation error or simulation time error metric. CPU-specific benchmarks are next, where we take our standard CPU suite and run the Steam Machine against it. These are intended to be CPU-bound, but we can't isolate the GPU obviously totally from this, so there are instances where it still hits other limits. Keep in mind that CPU benchmarking also heavily depends on memory. All of our desktop CPUs are spec matched, but we're testing the Steam Machine out of the box. That means some of the performance differences will be from memory, since we aren't isolating the components like we do for a desktop part, and there are no speed and timing controls. We'll start with 7-zip file compression testing measured in millions of instructions per second. In this test, the Steam Machine completed 55,000 MIPS on average, putting it just below the R5 3600, which leads by 7%, and just ahead of the R7 2700 with a 1.7% advantage for the Steam Machine CPU. The R5 2600 completed 46,000 MIPS, meaning the Steam Machine is ahead by 19%. Valve's Steam Machine may be a Zen 4 solution, but with its hard power limits in at least this test, it performs closer to Zen 2 and Zen Plus CPUs. In file decompression, the Steam Machine falls below the R7 2700 and R5 3600 meaningfully, outperforming only the R5 2600 on our charts. The Steam Machine ran about 7% ahead of the 2600. The 3600 outperformed the Steam Machine by 12.5%, with the 5600X at 31%. The 7600 completed 103,000 MIPS, which looks impressive against the 67,000 of the Steam Machine, and leads by 53%. Blender rendering with cycles on the CPU is next. In this one, we tested the Steam Machine both with the like-for-like version of Blender with all of our other CPU tests, and with the newer 5.1.2 version. The comparable version is slower, but better for AB, while the newer version may have optimizations for Linux. Like for like, the Steam Machine required 24.4 minutes to complete a render of a single frame of our intro animation, which is basically tied with the R5 5600X 3D and R5 5600X. We'll start with CPU game testing in Stellaris, where we can confidently test that we are CPU bound, not pushing against any kind of GPU performance limits. This helps us isolate the performance. The Steam Machine with the same DX11 version of the game required 67.4 seconds to complete simulation, which puts it between the R5 3600 and R7 3700X. The 5600X completed the same simulation in 24% less time. Using the Linux version of the game, the Steam Machine improved to 63.9 seconds, a reduction in time required of 5%. It's likely that the other parts here also improve with the Linux version of the game. CPU testing for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is up now, tested at 1080p medium. The Steam Machine ends up at the bottom of the chart. We haven't tested anything lower performance than the R5 2600 in a couple years, and the 2600's 111 FPS average result puts it 31% ahead of the machine. Even though this is significantly higher in frame rate than the GPU-targeted testing we ran in the same game, it's possible that we're hitting the GPU limit now, but higher. Let's move on to another game. In the Outer Worlds 2, with our CPU-focused test at 1080p low, the Steam Machine ran at 64 FPS average and roughly tied the R5 3600. The lows are nearly the same. The 3700X improves slightly, with the 5600X's 73 FPS average 13% ahead of the Steam Machine's 64. Overall, the absolute performance isn't bad for the machine, but paying this much money for effectively a 2019 R5 3600 computer in 2026 doesn't feel great. In Starfield at 1080p low for the CPU, the Steam Machine landed at 65 FPS average with poor lows, disproportionately worse than those found on the R5 2600, minding the differences in collection and OS. We may be binding more on the GPU in this test, as our GPU-focused results had it in the 40s. On to SteamOS and BIOS. Even if you haven't used the Steam Deck, you may be familiar with the SteamOS interface since Big Picture Mode was updated to match. Valve told us from the beginning that its plan was to make the 2022 reboot of SteamOS available to install on non-Valve devices, like the 2013 original, and on desktops, but that plan has been moving slowly, with some exceptions like the Legion Go S and third-party hacks. Valve reiterated to us that it's opening up installs on third-party hardware. It also sounds like NVIDIA driver support is predictably tricky because Linux with NVIDIA, but AMD and Intel should be fine. Escape during the boot process enters BIOS, which is navigable with a Steam controller if you get one before 2027. Performance settings are entirely adjusted from inside the OS and are very limited. There aren't any controls for memory speed or timings within BIOS, which may make upgrading less precise. There aren't any overclocking options or TDP or PPT bypasses, which sadly limits the headroom of mods, useful overclocks, and competitive overclocks. BIOS consists of settings for S4 Wake on USB, S4 S5 Wake on LAN, and WLAN, Fast Boot, which is on by default, BIOS Splash logo support for presumably third-party Steam machines from OEMs and SIs, and USB hotkey support. LED options include a toggle, power, and strip LED brightness, with the strip being used for game and firmware downloading progress as a progress bar, strip effects, and strip colors. Valve's been short-sighted on its non-handheld deployment of SteamOS in several instances. On first boot, the machine immediately shows diagrams for connecting a keyboard and mouse, as well as a Steam puck and controller. After that, we couldn't get any further than language and time zone without an internet connection, and there might be a workaround equivalent to the OBE bypass for Windows, but considering the whole thing is built around logging into a Steam account, that wouldn't really ultimately accomplish that much. Before going all in on SteamOS, it's worth considering how you feel about a Linux distribution that's built ground up with an always online philosophy, even if you can use it offline, especially with Steam having an offline mode. If you wanted to install this on a standalone desktop that's not the Steam machine, you might want to consider something like Bazite instead, just because it's built with the however the fuck you want to use it sort of use case in mind. Logging in was the first reminder that the SteamOS UI was not built to prioritize mouse and keyboard. Every time we clicked a text box, the on-screen keyboard would pop up even without a controller connected, and every menu shows controller glyphs. Some mouse cursor icons were low-res and stretched at 4K, and dragging items around in the download queue made them teleport around. The quick access menu that contains multiple vital settings doesn't have an on-screen prompt, and the keyboard shortcut is the less than obvious Control+2, or on an Xbox controller, Xbox and A. SteamOS is still controller first, desktop mode works fine, other than some occasional flickery artifacts, the keyboard and mouse work, and it feels familiar to any desktop OS, including file navigation, typing notes, and generally navigating the OS. Since this could be used as a desktop, we'd like Valve to tweak the gaming mode UI to dynamically adapt to mouse and keyboard and not simply just support them. We'd also like to see multi-display support, which currently only works in desktop mode. The biggest issue we ran into was that the resolution for all games is capped to 1920 by 1080 out of the box. There's a maximum resolution for each game in its Steam configuration settings, which starts at the known and common resolution of default, meaning that it defers to the top-level Steam setting for maximum game resolution, which is also default, meaning in this instance 1920 by 1080. Although useful for capping the resolution on borderless windowed-only games like Starfield, the implementation just isn't clean or good. Valve told us that, quote, 1080p is the system default game resolution on Steam Machine to ensure a good gameplay experience out of the box and is the resolution we use for Steam Machine verified testing, end quote. This led to a confusing situation where we had a system running at 4K connected to a 4K display, which would never show any resolutions above 1920 by 1080 with games in full screen mode. You can work around this. It's just confusing as an end user used to basically any other operating system. Responding to our feedback, Valve said it is, quote, currently working on UI updates to help customers understand what resolution their games will launch at and how they can easily change this setting, end quote. The fact that the cap is tied to the Steam Machine verified program makes us worried that they won't change it, but it should at least be less confusing. Speaking of the verified program, our feeling that Valve has been short-sighted is growing. We had wondered what the long-term plan was when Valve launched a verification program around a single deck hardware configuration that labels over 100,000 games with, quote, Steam Deck compatibility, end quote, and the answer is apparently that it's just adding another verification program, which seems unsustainable given the inevitable Deck 2, although since Valve can't count to 3, maybe it's not that unsustainable, but then they run into the problem of Legion Go S and other official SteamOS partners. There are other signs of ill-preparedness. All the directories and usernames on the Steam Machine contain the word deck, which it isn't, and every time we ping the sensors, we get an error because one of the Steam Deck sensors isn't present because it isn't a Steam Deck. Valve was supposedly always planning to distribute SteamOS on non-Deck devices, so they should have built this without those dependencies and artifacts. This is bleeding into game functionality as well. There's now a per-game disable Steam Deck auto-detection toggle, which may be necessary for games that see the Steam Machine running SteamOS and, for example, automatically disable mouse inputs like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Even with the toggle, there can be dev-side issues like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Resident Evil 4 detecting Linux and then disabling ray tracing, or Baldur's Gate 3, temporarily assuming that literally all Linux users ever are on SteamOS. Also, games like Total War Warhammer 3 will default to downloading native Linux builds whenever possible, even if those builds are worse and sometimes out of date than just running the Windows builds through Proton. To us, this is just messy, especially with APKs shipping on Steam for the ARM-based Steam frame. Valve laid the groundwork for a single device and type, so these artifacts are showing up in things that aren't those device and type. As for running software, we didn't run into any major differences versus the Steam Deck, other than higher performance, of course. We ran into some issues with DX11 games stuttering and presenting a lower frame rate than they should have, but that's not a surprise. Proton is a huge leap for Linux gaming, and sometimes gaming period, but sometimes it still takes legwork to find the right combination of Proton version and other settings, like disabling Steam Deck auto detection or FPS caps. As usual, some games, like F1, are completely incompatible due to their anti-cheat software. Valve has made some console E updates. The Steam Machine can be turned on by activating a paired Steam controller, which is actually pretty cool, and although that does mean that the machine is technically always on unless it's unplugged as confirmed by the manual, it draws 1 watt or less in standby. By default, the machine is set to finish downloads in a low power state when shutting down. Despite the disorganization in many places, we like SteamOS overall, and we especially like seeing Proton making Linux a viable option for gaming, with Proton having significantly improved frame time pacing over the years. When it works, it's often better than Windows for gaming. It's just kind of messy the way that the greater OS wrapper is deployed. With Schlern imaging set up to image the air density gradient at exhaust, we can see a relatively conical, wide flow out the back of the machine that pushes air far away from the box rapidly. The key thing we're looking for is whether the warmed air can get away fast enough that it doesn't recirculate. Here we see that it does. The air goes basically straight back and in a cone at fairly high speed, so you'll want to give this some room from the wall to ensure it doesn't just ricochet off the wall and find its way back in. With the valve plate on the front, you can see some of the air is going up and over the front panel. Some goes up and then down into the small slit at the top, and a lot of it is actually flowing towards the bottom inlet between the feet. Taking the front panel off altogether, you can see the impact to flow. Air predictably finds its way straight into the machine because there's not a solid wall there anymore, although mostly biased up and towards the top half due to positioning of the internal components. Switching to our steam vent downpour plate, it doesn't change much, which is by design. This is basically an open front panel with some smaller obstructions. Finally, as I moved the machine to rotate it with the front plate on, you can see how the air follows the opportunity to enter the bottom, where the reduced resistance creates a lower resistance inlet path. Finally, some quick fan machine tests. Referencing our ModMats wiring diagram for PWM 4-pin, we built an adapter cable to convert the steam machine fan into a standard-sized 4-pin header and test it on the fan machine. We have more of these coming up in a separate video that includes mounting the steam machine itself to the fan machine. This video is running long enough already, so we'll keep it short. In this quick chart of max P and Q, the steam machine fan exhibited unbelievably
beautiful thing. Let's talk about championships being the reason why the Greek Freak was seemingly not happy in Milwaukee for a while now, and then finally gets traded last night to Miami. Shams just came on and told us that basically the anatomy of this deal came down to Pat Riley offering up smaller contracts, more controllable contracts, and more assets, and the Bucks deciding to take a step back as opposed to going the championship angle with the Boston Celtics offer with Jaylen Brown and others. Your thoughts on how he ends up in Miami, and what are your thoughts on how the Eastern Conference looks now at the top?
Well, look, I think Miami is a top 4 team, just off the rip. And again, yes, you get Giannis, you have Powell, you have some outstanding players, but I also like Bobby Portis as a 6-man guy. So now you have scoring off your bench. You didn't really deplete yourself. You depleted of assets, not necessarily players. So I like what Miami's doing. I think they're one of the top teams, if healthy, in the Eastern Conference. And I still think, in my opinion, they need to improve their guard play a little bit, whether that's off the bench. If you look at the East, there's a lot of talented guards, a lot of talented defensive guards. So offensively, I think that's something that they need to improve. But ultimately, I think when you talk about Giannis leaving Milwaukee, that window had closed for them. You know, they gave up so many assets for Drew Holiday. They brought in players, and then all of a sudden, as those players age out and Giannis is in his prime, that gets to a space of where they're kind of stuck in the cap. They don't have as much assets, and so for them to rebuild with this young team and not rebuild all the way. Tyler Hero's an all-star. Jaime Jaquez is a talented young player, so is Khalil Ware, and they got a bunch of picks. If you look at it, I think they're probably a 3 to 5 year window from being back in that top 5, top 6. That's just being conservative. They could overachieve, but I think that's where Milwaukee is currently right now.
And they would have to hit on some of the draft picks, obviously, which turns to tonight. Tonight, the conversation is the next generation of NBA stars. Let's go ahead and hit all the main topics, okay? Because all we see is the headlines, because we are doofuses out here in Indiana, and we don't have one of the top 5 picks like we were supposed to.
Yeah, true.
Pacers are supposed to have like #1 pick or something like that. We didn't get it.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit bummed out about that entire thing. There was certainly a situation, but there are obviously other storylines that are going to continue to heat up. Go ahead, Tone.
Yeah, RJ, for those of us that didn't follow the college game super closely, we see Darren Peterson and we see the skill, and then we see the headlines about
thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
This is what you get if you pay €3,000 for an NVIDIA RTX 5090 Founders Edition on Temu. The other day I was investing my precious time in something very productive when suddenly I saw an ad for an NVIDIA 5090 from Temu. Here my millionaire YouTuber instincts kicked in and I saw that they were promoting this product. I said, hey, a 90 that is usually not in stock and when it is doesn't go below €2,000 for €300 is a bargain. I had seen scams where they would sell you mats and supports for the graphics card itself for €200, but they would tell you directly, yes, we'll sell you the NVIDIA 5090 for €300. I hadn't seen it before, so I couldn't help but buy it. Now I figured that I would get either nothing or the NVIDIA GeForce 0.59. So I took out the card and searched 90 sorting from high to low price, and I found this wonder. The price, well, it was expected, but this was the Founders Edition, the one that everyone wants and that is out of stock, not even in the official store. In other words, this one had to be resold. I would like, above all, if I get both, to compare the performance of both. I think we could get a surprise or two. It didn't have a single review, unlike the cheap one, which had 5 stars from an Englishman and a South African, a Moldovan who said it had a short circuit, and a Polish guy who said it was very good, but could be better packaged. I don't know what to conclude. I know I promised to buy a whole PC with components when that video reached 25,000 likes and it has more than 100,000, but anyway, I said that the budget was 2,500 euros for the whole PC and I'm spending 3,000 euros just on the graphics card. Nobody can complain. I already recorded that video too, so when this one reaches 50,000 likes I'll finally publish it. Well, folks, this month is a no-no. 3 weeks later, ironically, I got what I hope is the cheapest one first. And I hope so because not only does it have random numbers and QR codes, but because it's the crappiest packaging I've ever received in my life. The only closure protecting a supposedly $3,000 graphics card is this. And well, the fact that it's smaller than the 3060 box must be some kind of sign that it's not the real thing. It's practically unnecessary, but let's get out the unboxing knife. Today it has an easy job and I think it's going to point rather than cut because I just read on the only shipping label the package had that it's not the Nvidia 90 but the Depot FSRX 590. Oops. It only needed AT and a 0, almost. Well, as you can read, it also comes directly from Shenzhen, China, and if my instincts are correct now, it seems to me that this is not the packaging of a 3,000 euro graphics card. Look, at least here it lets us know that it is an AMD direct rival to Nvidia and clear configuration instructions on this. What could it be? Bolivian. On this little piece of paper they have just given themselves away by asking you to install the drivers for the AMD Radeon RX 590. So inside this really premium packaging we have a 200 euros graphics card sold for 300 and with an even crappy box than the original AMD one. All that remains is to pray until the next package arrives and that this was the 300 and not the 3,000 euros because Timo's tracking page still tells me that both are in German customs. It has only taken 2 more days for the next package to arrive and although we can't sing victory yet, there is some hope. It's a little bigger than the previous one. For what I paid I don't really like this little touch, sorry. You can tell that both knives come from Temu because this one also has random codes all over the box. I'm censoring them just in case, because I don't want visitors at home. The strangest thing, without a doubt, is the shipping label itself, so to speak, because the one on the previous package had the product information directly on it and on this one it's a whole sheet of paper stuck with a seal around it and with a P67 written in ballpoint pen on it. Wait, 67? Sorry. I feel confident both that it confirms that it went through Germany with its postal service and that it says premium here. So now, this is what you get if you pay 3,000. Another box. Oh my goodness, how heavy it is. Phew, with an easy open and all that. This is the opposite of a cheap box. I was saying before that we can't sing victory. Well, goosebumps, guys. First of all, because there are geeks who scam you by reselling the box and adding weight. I've seen it for up to $100 empty, and people who sell you the graphics card itself, but without the GPU or memory, just the completely obsolete PCB board, but with the identical case. In other words, until I connect it and run some tests, we won't know the official one, no matter how much it seems. This is what you get if you pay 3,000 euros for an Nvidia RTX 5090 Founders Edition on Temu. Look, I don't want to get my hopes up, okay? Because the blow I could get, if it's fake, it could be historic. How can it weigh so much? No, at least the box has to be real. I can get at least $100 reselling it. This is the box with the accessories. Very good. For 3,000 euros I'm bothered until this little corner comes folded. Instructions in Bolivian too. Hey, lots of love for Bolivia, huh? Okay, let's get to the main course. I'm not going to complain to Temu about the 300,590 euros scam because his response is literally going to be this. But since they've also scammed me out of 3,000 euros, I might be on the news tomorrow. Let's pray again that there's not a brick in here, because with the weight I'd perfectly believe it. And look, not even Luis Boutin has such a luxurious unboxing experience. Inside has arrived. The 5090 Founders Edition. We're crossing the first scam off the list because here we have the most powerful and expensive graphics card in the world. FPS resolution. Only an expert would be able to tell them apart, like 2 peas in a pod. Let's do the last and most important check, that it comes with all its internal components and that it works and that it's not short-circuited like our friend from Moldova's. And to test these graphics cards I have to solve a small problem first. I have less than a quarter of the storage left of the 2 terabytes I had. 4 more, 8 or even 16 would be fine. Because with the 90 I've also taken the opportunity to get this, an invention that will allow me to have up to 120 terabytes more storage and that I have to honestly recommend because considering the mess I have on my PC, it will be very useful. This is a NAS, basically a hacked hard drive. You can put up to 4 30 terabyte drives here and by simply connecting it to the power supply and to your PC, you've just set up your own cloud because of course, you'll be able to access it from your PC, especially to upload large files and organize your things. But if you're suddenly away from home and want to access anything you had stored here, like put on a movie or the photo album from your communion from 15 years ago, just by going to the app that's configured just by bringing your phone closer. You'll have absolutely everything available wherever you are, not to preview, but to watch and enjoy as if it were stored on your own device. And if you're one of those who goes to Starbucks with their laptop, the same application is also available. Everything is available at the moment. To upload all the files you want, You can do so using the 2.5 GB Ethernet cable that comes included. At that speed, it can upload a 4K movie in about 45 seconds. And if you don't have a USB-C in front and two 10 GB type of ports in the back and an HDMI, you can play them directly from here. It has automatic backups and equally robust security measures so that since it's a cloud for you and yours, everything stays between you and yours. Of course, you'll have the link in the description to see more about this wonder. In case you want to buy it, and those who watch me from TV once again or mom, I'm on TV, can scan this QR code in case you're interested.
What makes a daddy? Maybe it's just being the very best at what you do. Daddy. And GoDaddy is the daddy of domains. Domains that give you an
which you should because they're currently on sale. To see how good one is and how bad another is, I need to benchmark mine, the 3060, with 3 steps. Check its data on CPU ID, run the most popular 3D Mark test, and see how many FPS the most demanding graphics game in history, Fortnite, pulls. Let's start with the 12GB RTX 3060. The first thing we'll do is look at the results of the Nomad test, a performance test that works for graphics cards of all ranges. Data: 1014 points for an average of 20.14 FPS in the test. A little better than normal for this i7 processor and graphics card combo. It's a little far from the best score recorded, but be careful because all the top scores are the same as 50.90. Let's see if we can get close to Temu's. So to move on to the next graph, I'm just going to see how many FPS the 3060 pulls on the highest graphics cards in Fortnite. All in Epic and DirectX 12. Well, 50 stable. I won that game, of course. Thank God. This piece of junk has the same connectors as the 3060 and I don't have to invest too much time in assembling it. As long as it didn't short circuit my circuit, the rest of the PC is already counted as no, because it doesn't fit. Oh wait, not even the premium packaging prevented it from arriving bent. This is realistic. Bring on the unboxing pliers. Do you think I have to do this with the 3000 euros one? By the way, in case you hadn't noticed already, now I have this piece of RTX 3060 to spare. But since I went bankrupt buying from Temu, I'm not in a position to give it away either. Only if 10,000 people subscribe for this video, I'll raffle it off among my subscribers. Otherwise I'll be living on the streets in a couple of months. Well, as good as new. It pisses me off. It's nervous, huh? If I break something on my PC, you'll lose your video. What am I saying? If that's good, in a year, please, don't let it explode on me. Please, don't let it explode on me. Please, don't let it. Hello. Oh, well, maybe if I turn on the screen. But if I change it. Oh my gosh, what is this? Windows or Minecraft? What an awful resolution the wallpaper has. So far it's turned on fine, but it hasn't even turned on the fans. Damn, wait, damn, wait. It's not that it's not a 5090, it's that it's not a 590 either. It's a 590 GME, a version specifically for the Chinese market, up to 20% slower than the standard 590. Let's do the test with this all-powerful graphics card. Let's see what average it gets. I'm even surprised that it runs it. 974 points, even lower than its own average, even with an i7 processor. It's outrageous. We're still pretty far from the top 10 or even the top 1 million. And I think I already know what's going to happen as soon as I open this, but oh, it didn't make it. Yeah, with everything maxed out. I didn't expect to get this far. Let's see in the game. This is making my 3060 look bad, huh? It also shoots almost 50 FPS. I expected a lot. Hello. For this I spent 10 minutes updating the drivers. Yeah. He saw that the average FPS dropped a little and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. Well, next. The moment arrives that I don't know if I wanted to come, because it's one thing to have to put an adapter for the cables, but I don't even know if it's going to fit in my case, and if it doesn't fit, the video might end without me being able to continue testing it. It would piss me off, honestly. Here we have the beast, and I'm assuming the worst just by looking at it. We took out the powerful RTX 0.59, soon to be in the container closest to my house. If I give it away, they're going to ask me if I'm a reward or a punishment. And God, if you're there, please make it fit. I can't believe it. Wait, let me cook. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing as me. And Gentile, if you ever see this, please forgive the war crime I'm about to commit. But if I put the liquid cooling fans, from which we're going to ignore all the dust on the outside of the case and stick the ventilation radiator where the fans used to be, I'm not Einstein. But this should be more than enough space. Hey, yes, those of you from Oxford, Harvard, you're going to have my Insta in the description so I can go give talks to the students. I have a lot of knowledge to offer. All that's left is to make the fans halfway presentable so that the processor doesn't disintegrate as soon as you turn it on and connect the graphics card. Connect the graphics card. That's what the adapter is for. Sure. Oh, this one needs 4 of these. 4. Well, folks, I just realized that I need 4 8-pin cables for the graphics card and my power supply only has 2 more. I think I'll finish this video and retire. I can't take it anymore. Almost 4,000 bucks for this already. After all, I upload a few videos, thousands of euros, and then you don't even subscribe to the channel. I'd be happy just to reach 1 million. Just one. Well, I'm not even going to talk about the headache of having to rewire the entire computer, but there's only this cable left, the equivalent of the 4-cable 8-pin adapter that only some power supplies have. The most expensive ones, for whatever reason. And that's it. I strained myself connecting it because it was incredibly tight, but I think that's enough. Look, hey, if it explodes at least the video ends and I stop wasting money. Everything plugged in, everything ready. We're ready. The moment has arrived. TR21. Finally, graphics card, ventilation, all the computer cables changed and it turned on. This has to be a miracle, huh? I didn't have to touch anything, not even the BIOS, nor do I know it's a widescreen display, but both. I didn't see anything. Did you see anything? I didn't see anything. Straight to the CPU ID. We need the final check, that it's not a cheaper graphics card with the 5090 case. Half foresting. Perfect. It's perfect, guys. I have an RTX 90 from Temu, which only cost me 3,000 euros, plus a new power supply and a full computer overhaul. But it's the 90. Now I'm really eager to see if I can get close to the top, not the top 10, but at least I'd like to be in the top 1 million. 133 FPS. How ridiculous. It makes a weird sound, huh? It sounds like a cricket. Well, then I'll see if I can connect it better. Look at all the FPS, and finishes with 13,986 points, 7 times more than the 3,060. And let's not even talk about the GME, a little below its average, but I liked it. Second highlight of the video, see how many FPS Fortnite now pulls at maximum graphics. I remember the 3060 ends at around 50 and the 590 at 1. This single frame for an hour. By the way, I play a game where if you want me to keep making videos and not go bankrupt even though I'm a millionaire, you can use my code JJ on Rocket too. And I said that as soon as I reach 10,000 subscribers on my secondary channel, I'll upload my first video game video. So I don't know what you're waiting for. You'll also have the link in the description. And I don't know if Nvidia has some special graphics or ray racing, but I don't think I've ever seen Fortnite look so good in my life. And at 120 stable FPS with everything at maximum. This is outrageous. Look, I'm going to win this game quickly because I want to see. How many? I want to see how many I can reach in performance mode because I think it can easily reach 300. It's reaching 400, without overclocking, optimizing anything. What an insane graphic. And it remains stable there, huh? Above 300. Well, I think this deserves to win the third game of the video, right? Oh, this is buggy. Well, here's the answer. If you were wondering what you get if you buy a 5090 in Temu, do you know what you don't need to buy or pay for? Subscribe to this channel, which is completely free.
Yeah, having a professional photographer there for family photos in the exact moment that you find out that the family is going to be regathering in South Florida as teammates. Brady, you knew you were going to get traded? Is that kind of just a part of the business? We were just chatting about this with Richard Jefferson and what happened with Jaylen Brown out of Boston potentially getting traded for Giannis and the trade not happening and how he reacts. Obviously, with Team USA winning the gold medal, we had such a high, such a boost here in the United States of America. I think Matthew probably felt it with his organization, and obviously when you guys came back. But a lot of our stars were up on Canadian franchise.
Yeah.
And we had been reading things about maybe the local Canadians not being necessarily as excited to welcome back the American heroes, you know? And we as doofuses in America didn't necessarily love that. So I literally just said, we need all the guys back in America. We need all the guys back in America. That's what we need. Now, that was in the moment. That was rude. Obviously, we like Canada. We appreciate Canada and Ottawa. But how do you kind of get to the point of knowing you're going to get traded? And in hockey, is there a lot of conversations with the player? It sounds like no, other than just stay by your phone. How do you kind of end up in Florida? This seems like hockey gods kind of blessing kind of taking place.
Well, first, I'm just really thankful for the city of Ottawa, the Ottawa Senators organization, and I was there for 8 years. It was an amazing 8 years. It made me into who I am. But no, I think it was just a lot kind of went into it. It wasn't an easy decision at all. It was tough, but felt like it was just ready for the next chapter and just have those conversations with the Senators management and it's just kind of waiting around a little bit, let them I guess figure it out a little bit, and just I got a call just no, things were happening really fast. It was pretty just stagnant and stale, and just kind of just going about everyday life. And then over the weekend, I just got a call from our agent saying that things are happening pretty fast. So just be on your phone. Just could happen any second, but it could happen in a couple of days. So I think that was more draining mentally and emotionally. And now that it's done, it's very thankful for everybody involved, both parties, and no, like I said, I wouldn't be the man I am if it wasn't for all the people in Ottawa that welcomed me from day one. So now we're on to the next chapter. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, great barn up there in Ottawa, and I appreciate you shouting them out. Obviously, a massive piece of your story. Let's talk about you two's story. Obviously, we saw you on Team USA. Brady, I think we saw a lot of behind the scenes mic'd up of you actually saying, we're going to win this game, like taking on a leadership role. I think you have a seat. Matthew, obviously, you're a massive leader down there in Florida. Team USA, you're together. How many other teams have you guys played together? And is there just a fist fight that happens between you both to see who's the alpha? How do the Kachucks kind of handle that situation, Matt?
No, there's no fist fighting because I'm fighting an uphill battle on that one. But other than Team USA at the Four Nations Olympics, I think the first time we ever played with each other was at the All-Star game down here in Florida. So we've only been playing together for 3 times, never on the same regular season team. But I'm over the moon excited. What I told Brady too, what's great about down here is like he had to wear a lot of hats playing up in Ottawa, being a young captain, playing in Canada, just dealing with like a lot of stuff, like whether it's in his control or not, which is, I mean, sometimes a little bit unfortunate in the business where like the best part about playing down here, and this might sound like a little bit bad, but we're really just like pieces of meat down here. Like you have your role, like you wear one hat, you don't have to do somebody else's job. And it's just a total group effort. We're a deep team. I mean, it's the greatest place to live. Look at Giannis coming down here. It's not even the same sport, and it's very similar. And just life's good, and the team's fun, and there's nobody fighting to be the alpha. I mean, there's so many.
Well, just know if I sign down there, day one, punching Brady right in the face. Okay. Yeah.
Well, what are you gonna have to make down here? Like 70 million? You're
All right, okay. I see the state tax. I understand that there's a potential alternate home coming down there, no doubt. But I
just tell Brady, like everybody's an alpha in their own way. There's guys in this team. I mean, there's maybe if guys were on other teams, there could be 10 captains on our team right now here in Florida. So just come down here, have so much fun. Do your job and your job only, and you're just going to see your game just elevate to a whole nother level. So I can't wait to see him this year. I think the best is yet to come with him.
We can't wait to watch you both on the ice. Tone has a question for you.
Yeah, you boys were just talking about being at a baptism. That was for children. Matthew, have you baptized Brady yet? Do you just take him to the elbow room and pour a beer over his head? How does that work?
I knew that was coming. We're in the mix of that summer grind right now. Brady's only here for a few days, so am I. Maybe we'll. I mean, the dream is to have that elbow room baptism next year in mid-June, right? Like that's the dream. So I'm sure we'll have a couple.
The Scots are there now. If you want to go party with the Scots,
not this trip.
Yeah, the Scottish folks are over there right now. They're kind of holding it down. I assume the Kachucks could keep. If it means anything, we would send the Kachucks to represent us in a Scottish party.
Walt too.
Yeah, well, Big Walt as well, which also leads to this. Go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you guys are now finding out that you're going to be playing together, and I assume that is awesome. You're all together, but how special was it hearing that your dad is going in to the Hall of Fame as well, and being able to kind of share that moment with it? Because every time you guys, accomplish something, it seems like that is one of the first things the camera picks up as it cuts to the crowd, and your dad is always there supporting you guys. So how awesome was that moment?
That was incredible. We've been talking. You just one-upped us all weekend. So, I mean, just the way we found out, he was ready. He found out, I think it was in St. Louis. The announcement was at 2. And he found out at 12:30, just like nobody noticed. He went outside for a phone call and then came back. And then he was like, I'm ready to take this to the announcement, not tell anybody, and just let everybody be surprised. But he's like, all right, like my uncle is there and my cousin was there. And he's like, all right, Brady, just go grab a beer. We'll have it in the kitchen so, nobody can see it. And then it's like, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, guys, cheers. I just got in the hall. And everybody went nuts and lost it. And it was unbelievable. Like, my mom's sitting in the other room with the grandkids, like, what's going on? And then it was just awesome. Just such a special moment that I know I'll never forget. It's so well deserved, and I'm just so happy for him.
Yeah, Matt, we were looking up his stats earlier today. You guys got a lot of work to do, bro.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of work to do. What a stud. I love that he is living his career still through you guys as well. And it's very obvious and it's very evident. And I love how much of a family thing hockey is. You know, we saw that obviously with the Hugheses, and we see it with you, and it feels like we looked it up. How many sets of brothers have played on the same
I
team?
think 47 total sets of brothers have played on the same team.
It's incredible because you guys think, like, obviously you two battling against each other as lads, young lads, probably has helped all this. Is that an accurate depiction, or is the age difference too much, or how do you kind of attribute that to the success of it all, Matt?
I just think that I had to drag Brady along with me. I mean, I needed somebody to play mini hockey with. I needed somebody to play roller hockey with. So I dragged him along, and I think it really helped both of us. And I mean, we've competed in every single thing that you could ever think about all of our lives. And as we've gotten older, that shifted to competing against each other into really, really, really wanting to compete with each other. And we had that experience at Four Nations, had the best time in the world, and then went to the Olympics. And I mean, it was literally the best time in the world with us in our memories. So, I mean, this is just a dream come true. This is Olympics on steroids for us every single day. Having him at the rink today, just like driving him in the golf cart, it's just, you can't make it up right now. So,
oh, that's really cute. Oh, guys, really cute, guys. It's really cute.
We're just having a blast, and the girls are out together, our wives, you know, figuring out where he's going to live. And so just our family has always been so close, and this experience, us playing with each other, is just a dream for the whole family.
All right, we're happy to hear that. We're also happy that you guys are going to play a brand of hockey that we love. To that point, Connor has a question. Last question for you.
Yeah, Brady, going all the way back to the Four Nations, you know, it kind of started where you guys just started throwing hands right away before the puck even dropped. It was kind of agreed upon. And then going back to the playoffs, game one, first one out of any series, you and Jordan Stahl basically dropped the mitts right off the bat. What was that like? How did that come about? And did you realize in the moment, like, oh, I might be beating the hell out of the Conn Smythe winner in game one?
Yeah. That one just wanted, we I wouldn't say we snuck in, but just wanted to show, we're playing against, an unreal team, and I knew I was going to be playing against, Stahl all series, and I guess just wanted to show, our team and everybody that now we're gonna be ready to play. We're gonna try to conquer the beast and just kind of show we're ready. And didn't expect what followed after. Unfortunately, getting swept and then them going on to win the Stanley Cup and then him winning the Conn Smythe. So that one stung a little bit after, but he's a great player and really a great captain too.
Yeah, we all got a chance to remember and experience the end of Jordan Stahl's magical playoff run, but it was nice to relive the very beginning of that entire thing where you two just seemingly both agree to fighting each other there too. How does that go about? You guys just look at each other? Because from our angle, it looked like you said, yeah. And he said, yeah. Nope. And then literally we just get after it. Is that as much as it takes in the hockey world? As somebody, I think you beat the hell out of PK as a rookie as well, Subban.
Oh, yeah.
He still tells the story. Whenever it comes to the fighting thing, is there normally some sort of agreement that takes place between each other? Is it like, is it just known? Or is that shit coming out of nowhere for one of you normally?
Well, I mean, that situation, it was more like we were going to fight at some point this series. And then he was like, why don't we just fight now? I was like, okay, great. Like, I didn't expect that. So, but then usually it's weird. Like, you just have like that connection with the guy. Like, you don't even have to say anything. You just,
how did the one with PK go?
Just, he knocked you down and just, I was like, that wasn't more of a question. I was like, we're going, and just immediately grabbed on and forced hand. So, but yeah, no, it's just weird. You just sometimes just don't even have to say anything. You just both know what's happening.
And what's the strategy? Matt, do you fight much? I don't think I see you hitting people a lot.
More of a pass.
I do not. I don't. I'm definitely not as good as him.
Yeah, but
that's what all the guys were saying today. They're like, I can't believe how big he is, and like in person, he's just a monster. So no wonder why he does good at the fighting. But no, Brady, he is way better at that. He's way better at a lot of things than me, and that is definitely one.
Yeah, okay, well, that's going to happen, I think, in the household. These guys, especially Big Walt's kids.
What?
You know, that's going to take place. Yeah, but PK said that you were a grown man. And now he said you did get him at the end of his shift. He said he said you got him at the end of his shift, which is a strategy move by you, potentially. Is that accurate?
Well, I will say I do have to defend him. Fighting at the end of the shift is the worst thing in the world. You're already fighting an uphill battle with that one. So, yeah, he was in one from the very beginning. See, that's where
You're the best.
I think I was so fresh.
You guys are the best. All right, enjoy yourselves. Congratulations on teaming up, and we can't wait to see what Hockey Beach down there has in store for the rest of us as we go forward here. Congrats, boys. Enjoy it all.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Tell the old man we said congrats on the Hall of Fame. That's awesome, ladies and gentlemen. That's the Florida Panthers. Kachaya.
Yeah, Kachooks.
Brady kind of looks like he's like Shrek there sitting next to.
Yeah,
huge.
He's a big son of a bitch.
I mean, his fucking head.
Yeah, he's a big son of a bitch.
His wrist had like an oversized thing to it.
Yeah, that's what PK said. He said when he got his hands on me, it was, holy shit, this is the strongest 18-year-old probably walking the planet right now.
Yeah, and now he and Marchand are on the same team.
Yeah, Bradley.
And Matthew.
And Sam Bennett.
And Barkey. And Rhino.
They got a lot of pests over there.
They do.
Yeah, and then they got the guy.
Yeah.
They got the, is that right? You're going to do what to Marshy? Okay.
All right, bring him in, beat the shit out of him. Let's go.
Yeah. Where's Brady?
He's talented too. It's not just like he's a big.
No.
He's not a big dumb goon of the past.
No, he's not.
No, he's able to handle his business. We were going to show an interview with Tyler Adams that we were able to record earlier, but I don't know if we're able. Actually, let's do it. Ask them to push it to 105. Ask them to push it to 105. Ladies and gentlemen, we had an incredible opportunity to catch up with a man who's been a part of 2 World Cups now with Team USA, Tyler Adams from earlier today. Look at you. You look like a guy that's already clinched to go to the elimination round in the World Cup. Here we go. Woo! Congratulations, sir. Obviously, you're 27. You were 23 in 2022 while you were captain of the U.S. national team. Now back with the